This morning, I'm going to take you back to 1949. And in 1949, several really good films from Ealing were produced, and not on purpose. They just all happened to come out. Three really good films came out in the same year, all from Ealing. So Passport to Pimlico, 1949. It's an Ealing comedy. It's black and white. It's a classic. The screenplay was by T.E.B. Clarke. I'll go into more about that later. It's produced by Michael Balcon and directed by Henry Cornelius. Henry Cornelius never ever worked for Ealing again after this particular project. The film opens with if you watch the film, the first scene, the first cut, is it opens with "dedicated to the memory of" a title card, and then shows a wreath with some small cards inside. Now, anyone slightly younger than my generation probably wouldn't have a clue what those are. I didn't, but anyone slightly older than me, a couple of years older than me, would recognise those as ration cards from ration books, which were used after World War II in Britain, even quite late, to ensure adequate supply of goods from overseas and within Britain. It is set in a scorching hot summer in which it hasn't rained for so long. Mr. Pemberton runs the local ironmonger shop. He also builds town planning models of his future plan for a Lido in that area. An unexploded bomb is being removed. A big pit has been excavated around it. And local kids playing accidentally roll a metal wheel down the shaft. And, of course, the bomb explodes. Pemberton investigates, but he accidentally slides down the shaft and thinks he's seen a gap in the earth with treasure behind. Comes out. He and his daughter go down there later and find it was true. They found a large cellar full of historical treasure and a scroll or a document of some kind. The document is verified by Professor Hatton Jones, who's played by Margaret Rutherford. Very, very good character in this. And the scroll, the document is basically a charter to do with the last Duke of Burgundy, who sheltered there in that little cellar. Historically, and as the charter was never revoked, that area of Pimlico is still legally a part of Burgundy. And as a result of this, the residents of Pimlico realise we're all foreigners and consequently realise that they are no longer in England, and therefore the rationing doesn't apply. So they each go on a shopping spree, and they all go together in the pub. They gather in the pub later that evening, and of course, the pub no longer has closing time anymore because they're not in England. So any other such restrictions found on British soil, all gone. There's a good sing-along scene with Charles Hawtrey, who would later appear in Carry On, playing the piano very deftly. Black market sellers flood into the area, as do other shoppers who would otherwise be subject to rationing. And this causes problems for the new state of Burgundy. The British government surround Burgundy with barbed wire, and in return the Burgundians stop a tube train and demand to see passports of all passengers. And this results in a stalemate with the British government, who cut off water and power and food. And this is in the middle of a very, very long heat wave. Burgundians hook up a hose to the water main on British soil one night, sneaking out, to fill a bomb crater with water. And Londoners who've heard of the problems of the siege, they're in sympathy, and they start throwing food over the barbed wire to feed the Burgundians, which is quite nice. And the helicopter flies over and supplies milk through a hose. The British government realised that starving the Burgundian people is probably an unpopular move. So the solution of the Burgundians in particular, Chancellor Mr. Wicks, who is also the bank manager before this, is to loan the treasure to Britain with the interest left over for the Burgundians' benefit. And the film demonstrates the nature of, I suppose, the British public when faced with a common threat, to unite against it, breaking down social barriers, to do so with a good helping of anarchy. And one good quote in the film, Connie Pemberton, we always were English, and we always will be English, and it's just because we are English that we're sticking up for our right to be Burgundians. Michael Balcon was the head of Ealing Studios, and T.E.B. Clarke wrote the story based on an incident in World War II whereby the maternity ward of Ottawa Civic Hospital was declared extraterritorial. Get that word correct. Declared extraterritorial by the Canadian government for a brief period of time, and this allowed Princess Juliana to have her baby born on Dutch territory to keep the line to the throne. And the film was set in a heatwave, but was actually shot in 1948's excessively wet summer. And this caused production to go over time and over budget through many delays. They started shooting early each day, and they tried to get the first successful shot in the can by 9 a.m. An average of 10 takes per day were shot, trying to get 2.5 minutes of usable rushes per day. The outdoor scenes were actually shot in Lambeth. There was a big World War II bomb site that they built the set upon. When the filming was over, the site had to be restored to the bomb-damaged state to allow the locals to claim war damage compensation. It's a really nice film, very, very much worth watching. 1949, Passport to Pimlico.